Well, let me first introduce the panel who I am. My name is BoardGameBronies. I've been a fanfiction writer for quite a while. I don't even know the number of years because I start and I stop and I start and I stop. That's the kind of writing that I do, because I will go into a fandom and I'll like write something that I really like. It'll be like that one thing and then leave. But MLP has been the first time where I've written several works and just keep going at it. Yeah.
I am actually currently working on about 3 current works and 1 major fic that's going to come up once I improve my skills. Skills more, I've only got a plan for about 9+ seasons, 25 chapters a season. Season like a really like an epic kind of thing.
We can talk about that too. Yeah. About long hauls.
I've got a plan 5 set, but I've already started the first one.
Well, just to cap what this panel's about, this is how to transform your fan fiction into your fiction. And the point of that is that I saw the need to do something beyond just enjoying the show, whatever show it is or whatever fan fiction it is, because I wanted to do something that I could make my own. I always had that argument before fan fiction, like, what's it useful for? Why write it if you can't even make it productive beyond the show's fan base? So I had a discussion with one of my friends and came up with the idea that there has to be a way to change your fan fiction into something that's your own personal style with your own personal characters and your own ideas. But fan fiction's like training wheels. You use it to start, you figure things out. You didn't like what you wrote first, but it's okay because you had to start with something.
I loved it at the time. It's just now that I've matured and learned how to tell a Mary Sue for what it is, it just was good. You can't be so hard on yourself. That's I laugh at myself.
Something else I just want to point out about my long haul fic is that my long haul fic is actually based mostly around OCs. C's based on My Little Pony world and the main 6 and those ponies sometimes interact but aren't the main cast per se.
Yeah, saying it right now, OC fiction in the universe is not a bad thing. You look at Fallout Equestria, the big ones.
Yeah.
You look at
things
like Through the Eyes of Another Pony or things like that, just those big ones. Well, they focus mostly around the OCs. There's the occasional main character that is in 6, or just a character in the show, like Through the Eyes is Princess Luna, so that's the occasion. Maybe 6 show up here and there. But those are typically I find that OC fiction are the ones that they're easier to write because the character is your own. But when you try to write a character that's not yours, you have to know that character back to front. You have to have seen their episodes, you have to see the episodes they're not in, but they appear in multiple times. You have their quirks. I still have trouble. I empathize with Twilight a lot, but I still find it hard to write. I still find it hard to write Twilight.
The only character in the show who I find hard to write is Pinkie Pie, simply because of her randomness.
I can do Pinkie Pie. I just imagine
dumbness. Just for my mind style, I don't write random well.
Yeah, some people just make her break the fourth wall like crazy, but that's not what she is. She's just so random that sometimes she accidentally breaks the fourth wall. But if you do it multiple times to explain her randomness, then it's not randomness, and you're just screwing up what she is. Yeah. But like my fiction, I basically want to explain some of the past of the question. So I said, what if about 130 years before the actual show started, Celestia found an egg, hatched it, it was a baby dragon, and now he's going across Prestia to gain his wings. So yeah, basically to explain some history and stuff, but yeah.
My fic actually does also go into the history, but to a more extreme sense. My story is based around two time periods: the modern Equestria and 5,000 years ago.
Let's cover a couple of things to help you guys out, since I've got a feel for what you guys like now. There's a lot of things you need to keep in mind, like when you're writing your fan fiction. There's like only a couple of rules that you really need to adhere to, like what's the canon ideas of these characters. Focus on that, and then just figure out what your story's about. If you have to break that canon just to make a point, then you can do it then. But mostly people, if you want to write an MLP, you gotta have Pony something in there. You gotta reference the show. So then,
People want to read it too.
yeah, that's usually the reason that people read it, because if they recognize something in there that they like, it reminds them of something from the show. In order to get past that, you have to find out in your writing a couple of things. Let's start with this one. You need to figure out where you cater to your fanfiction character and you didn't go off and do something on your own. For example, the Doctor from Doctor Who. I've watched seasons 1 and 2 of the reboot of Doctor Who and part of season 3, and from what I've seen from that, the character is very much about nonviolent results, like trying to resolve things without resorting to violence. Tries to.
Never works.
Almost never works.
But the thing is, perhaps you're writing a Doctor Who fanfic, and you have the character the Doctor, and normally it's a non-violent approach that at least starts the story.
Yeah.
Well, what if you had a great opportunity to make an excellent scene about morality with your character, but you didn't do it because you wanted them to be more like the Doctor, not hurt anyone, not try and kill anyone, but you need to identify where you stopped yourself like that and think, well, what if this isn't the Doctor? What if he had to kill that person? What if it's important to the story, but maybe not morally right or morally justifiable? Think of what your characters can do that you have limited because of the canon universe, and then just break those little restrictions one at a time to see what happens. Do you guys have anything to say first?
My major idea has a similar way. It starts out with just Pony just appears in Ponyville and no one knows where he came from. He seems
HIE.
And he seems kind of a bit dim. And basically, as you find out about his history and his understanding of magic compared to the modern understanding, certain canons start breaking without really breaking because of the fact that we found out they were misconceptions created by misunderstandings.
That's a good way of approaching that story. I mean, because that's already halfway to making your own world, because you're breaking things that people are used to. Did you have something too? Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
I actually will go into more detail.
I'll be right with you.
Detail, but I don't want to be the only one talking because of the fact that if I try to explain everything about my fic,
It's going to take
Okay, go ahead.
It will take a long time.
Let's go to you. What did you want to
So you
say?
said that you want the way to write videos will basically break the bounds of what's canon and create your own world. Well, I'm currently in the process of writing an Assassin's Creed fanfiction.
Ooh, wow. Okay.
It doesn't contain any of the Assassin's Creed characters.
Okay.
And it only has 4 ponies in it. The thing is, I'm not sure if I've gone too far with this, but I've come to the point where I follow the basic order of what assassins are and temples are, obviously.
Okay.
Templars control freaks, want everyone to control. Assassins are pretty much just the ones fighting that. But I've come up with my own terminology and ranking for the assassin system.
Okay.
For instance, like in each, what I call a sect, like in Kenchalot, there's a Kenchalot sect, then there's the Ponyville sect, and in each sect there is a leader, and based on gender is given a title. If they're male, they're called the pater, and if they're female, they're called the mater, which translated in Latin means mother and father.
Okay.
And the leader of the assassin order would be called the reptile, which in Latin means leader.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if I want to follow that, or if that's...
Why would you think you went too far?
Simply because I've added something to both Assassin's Creed and my own movie that has not existed before.
Well, in terms of what fans may want, maybe. But in terms of you actually straying away from the source material, then I don't think you've gone far enough. Because it's all about what is your goal. If you want people who are either pony fans, since it seems mostly pony, that it seems like you want the pony fans who are also into Assassin's Creed, rather than the Assassin's Creed fans who are also into pony. I don't know if I just don't know if there's a very big difference there. I think it's what you focus on more. Like if like Brony with Assassin's Creed versus Assassin's Creed with some interest in Pony. But I would say that you have a really interesting take on how to continue the ideas of your story, and making up systems of organization like that for like the Assassins Guilds and the Templars. That's not a bad idea. In fact, that's a good thing if you want to make it your own. But again, you've got some stuff you got to be careful about, because you have two things that you need to watch for. Anything that you do in Assassin's Creed that they have already done, and anything in Pony that they've already done. And even though you're mixing them, there's still that obvious connection, and you'll need to move away from that if you want it to be your own work.
I mean, the main focus of it is about this. First off, the main character is Octavia, and
Yeah.
she's gonna be the main protagonist.
It's pretty boss.
But and it's always focusing around this this music box. It's been in her family for generations, yada yada. And basically, things happen. She almost gets killed. Final Stretch, who turns out to be an assassin, who is placed there to protect her and whatnot, ended up, saving her. And throughout the entire story, kind of like how in the actual game, you go through the animus and whatnot. It's somewhat like that, except every now and then she falls asleep and she has this dream about an ancestor she had, whose name was Fondos the Cop.
And which is a theme that's in Assassin's Creed. So,
and from there, it's from going from there and just going through the storyline, and eventually I'm gonna end it how a lot of like in Assassin's Creed, you end up killing.
do you want to reveal the ending? It's being recorded.
Well, I'm not revealing the ending. I'm just revealing what may or may not happen. I'm still kind of just going along with it, trying to figure out what I really want to do with it. But it's probably gonna end with her either sparing someone's life or killing someone.
Okay. Boils down to that.
I actually have another question. See, what I do with the magic system is I've kind of invented a science behind how magic machines and cutie marks work, based around a certain style of magic that I have invented using sources from several things, including like Dragon Ball Z's Ki and Naruto's chakra and stuff like that, kind of using very small portions from that with a lot of my own imagination to come up with a system that dictates how cutie marks affect your battle style and how in certain styles you can add machines onto your armors that are fueled by magic. It is an uber complex system that I've never actually managed to fully explain to anyone, simply because of the massive amount of time it takes.
Then you know what? You need to write it down, and through the writing, explain it piece by piece, and keep the reader interested.
That is actually sorry about my stuttering. That actually was my plan. My thing was that I simply wanted to know what your take on me, sort of inventing my own style of magic and how cutie marks work and all that.
Again, that like with yours, another great idea of moving away from the source material, because you're coming up with separate reasons for why things are the way they are. And that was another thing too that I was actually talking about. You're coming off fast. Good job.
Actually, the Crystal Caverns, I explained that as I actually studied the dragons, and most of them like to go out in a final place of glory when they're at old age, and none of them actually die natural causes or sickness. So what if the mother of the dragon died because she was sick and didn't actually go out of battle? So her final breaths contain her soul and her spirit, and they slowly work the caverns underneath it. Basically, the crystals are what's left of her, so it explains the crystal caverns to examine.
It seems like you do a really good job of what-ifing things and come up with a separate idea for them, and that's good, because that'll help you come up with some things that go beyond the source material of the show, make it your own. And it seems like when you talked about the way that it works for like the dragons and crystals, is that what?
No, their final breaths contain basically their entire existence.
Oh, okay.
The centuries, essence, and it just escapes them. But since she was in a cave, it didn't wasn't able to fully escape in the atmosphere, so it just, it lined the walls and slowly over the edges the crystals formed, and Camelot was built on top of it when they discovered it.
It might be a good idea for you to research in more depth into self mythology, because what you're describing there is very much a mythological style of storytelling, where something that doesn't seem like natural for what we're used to, like the breath becoming, saturated the environment like that becomes its own myth, its own quality. So I recommend reading more about mythology and seeing how you can make that work with your stories.
Yeah, it's been a hard time actually finding sources about dragons dying of natural causes. All of them are either they get killed or they go out and place glory because they're right before their twilight years, where they basically fall asleep for a century and then die in their sleep. They don't want that. That's all I've come up with. So it's kind of hard finding it.
I think one thing you could do is that instead of actually looking at mythology on dragons, you check out mythology on other creatures and try to implement it in your own style.
Good idea. Thank you.
That way it will be both somewhat original, but you'll keep that mythological style that you're in.
Alright, let me give you a couple more ideas here too. We're doing pretty good on time. We have, if I'm correct, 37 minutes? Okay. So let's see. One of the things that I want people to focus on whenever you write fan fiction, it's what made you excited about the story. Because there's a lot of stories to tell, and even though we have a plethora of fan fiction out there, various series, various shows, movies, cartoons, comics, there's always new stories to tell. I believe that. I really do. Because the reason why I believe that is that each person has their own personal story. Like, with all 6 of us in this room right now, every one of us has a different life that we can implement into written form, even if it's not in its entirety. So what you need to think about is what did you like about the story that you wrote? What can you do from your own life, your own experiences, and put it in there? Because even if someone were to write the same thing, same concept that you had, like the Assassin's Creed Pony crossover, your own personal perspective is going to change that based upon what you can draw from your life. So you need to figure out what excites you about that story, what drew you to it in the first place. You guys have any thoughts about that?
I actually kind of do, because something that I do quite often, sorry to cut you off, what I do quite often is I'm watching a random show like Mega Sex LR for example, and I see certain elements of the story I like, and then what my grand actors do is take elements from all the different shows I'm watching and kind of smash them all together in my head, and fan fiction start popping out of there. I've actually put a filter in my own head mentally to make sure that I don't write too many fan fictions.
That can be tough sometimes. Because you wanted to get all the stories out there.
Yeah.
And what did you want to say?
Ask if there was like a certain thing that kind of got you really excited about this.
Oh, me? Or you? Or I asked you.
Yeah, asked us that question. And truth be told, with this one that I'm currently writing, I think it's mainly because both in school and my spare time, I'm also a saxophonist.
Oh, cool.
And music is a real big part of my life. And now when you asked me that question, I kind of looked back into the entire thing when I wrote it, and I realized that I wrote all these little things that had to do with music. Obviously, since Octavia was the main character.
Yeah.
And like there's like a little scene where all those really big dramatic jumps that you make in the game in Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Well, I made it so like basically this guy, he had this like a symphony playing in his head the entire time. Like whenever there's gonna be big action, I would implement that in. And I guess that's kind of like what keeps me excited, is just adding kind of trying to add music by using words.
That's tough, but that's really a good idea, because you're dealing with the written word versus the show. There's a lot of things you can implement there that you would never see in the show. Like there'd be a visual way to show that, but written wise, you can come up with some really interesting ways of using music terms and comparing that to the action that's happening.
It's really funny you mentioned music tracks because that guy mentioned Mambo Staccato. He had this, he is obviously, as I said, taking his ancestor and whatnot, but during his time he actually was in love with the mayor whose name was Reina Nagato. The last name Staccato and Nagato, if y'all doing music, you'll know it was pretty much all the same. Long and connected compared to short and lifted. And
so the Doctor versus the Master. Doctor, all his lives, are long and great connect. You only see short bursts of the Master character. And it didn't help he has a staccato motif with a theme. And it's clear.
We can talk later.
And for me, I always liked, even though I would have preferred to do a Luna as the hatch mother, I knew that would kind of cause to have to go to Luna first, and I didn't want to do that on that. So actually doing it with Celestia gave me a better idea because she's more motherly, and I always liked the mythological things. My favorite creatures have always been raptors, T-Rexes, dragons. It's always been like that. And I just thought, well, this is fully mythical, and there's a lot of stuff that the show never explained. So I could lead this up to where my actual OCs to the current date, my DeviantArt account, minus the few of broken Mary Sue's active fix children. And I can lead up to him falling in love with Pony and actually work that into the birds and explain why Celestia maybe didn't tell Twilight of that, or just explain more of how she slightly changed over years.
wait, when you say didn't tell Twilight about that, are you talking about Spike?
Well, Spike would have asked Twilight about that, and Twilight would go straight to Celestia asking if there's any information on it.
One more thing and then we'll move on.
Okay, going. Something I want to point out about something I've had to do with in terms of planning. There are two things. One is in the later story, some of the action starts to get a little Dragon Ball Z style in terms of scale.
Yeah.
So in my head, I sometimes have a hard time planning that in such a way that it can be worded well. And the other thing is writing children well.
Okay.
Well, writing children well, as I've seen in a lot of other fan fictions and media, is no easy feat.
Yeah. I'll say this real quick about that. Writing about characters with different levels of experience, you have to consider what their view of the world is and then react on that. Like the writers of MLP who write the Cutie Mark Crusaders notice that a lot of their characterization is involved in their huge drive to get cutie marks. I mean, that seems to be almost everything that they do except for Apple Bloom and Babseed in the Apple Family Reunion, when they're not really focusing on that. They're focusing on being together, which is, it's pretty remarkable actually. They finally got away from the whole cutie mark being the main focus to just spending time together.
I had actually also kind of like Sweetville and Scootaloo also had an episode like that, where Sweetville had an episode about her relationship with Rarity, and then Scootaloo had one about not really having a real sister.
Good point. The relationship ones.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was just about to mention that those things
Okay. Alright. Yeah. Just to recap, we're doing the how to transform your fan fiction into your fiction. I've covered a few points, but you still got a lot of time, so I'm going to cover some more points.
Alright.
Let's do the next one. And when it comes to trying to figure out how to write something that's unique in your own from the fan fiction world that you're creating, whatever it is, whatever series, you need to consider what is your comfort zone. I kind of link this to OCs, original characters, a lot, because usually the reason people put an OC in there, and if it's just one, and it's usually a main character, tends to be themselves in that world. So
they're a pony sauce.
Yeah, if it's a pony world. The thing with that is when you usually create an OC, there's a lot of wish fulfillment there. Why are you there? What are you doing? Who are you trying to meet? What are you trying to accomplish? But the problem with that is wish fulfillment is very a temporary sort of thing. So you need to consider where's your comfort zone, and then just start breaking it little by little. If there was a moment in there, for example, you had your character meet Sweetie Belle, and wanted to help get, maybe your character doesn't have a cutie mark either, and you want to get a cutie mark along with the cutie mark crusaders. Well, to break the wish fulfillment, you can consider opportunities where it's bad for you as you're in your comfort zone. Like maybe that character never gets a cutie mark. I mean, that would be the complete opposite of wish fulfillment for most people. Like saying, like, what if I have no talent, or what if I don't know what it is? What if I never find out what my calling is? And if you come up with ways to subvert your own desires into fan fiction form, which becomes your own fan fiction, it will start to go away from the canon and the world if you get away from what you like about the world and start adding conflict. Conflict is a big key to making something different, because if you're conflicting with yourself and your wish fulfillment, then what originally drew you to the show, you're now going away from that just a little bit. And you'll have to do it piece by piece to figure out how to make something original.
Something I'd actually point out is in my major fiction I'm planning, I've actually got something like that planned for over a dozen characters, actually. Simply the fact that the only main characters who are really going to be majorly involved with the story are the Cutie Mark Crusaders. Besides the Cutie Mark Crusaders, the rest of the main characters are going to be more side characters. But pretty much what I have is, my story is actually based around conflict. Scene and on-scene conflict. Conflict that sometimes not even realize that it's going on just someone who can see it points it out to you kind of stuff.
I would say that whenever you're stuck and you want to make something different, if you've created this peaceful little scene, add some conflict. Just even if, as long as it makes sense with what you're trying to accomplish. Like, don't fabricate something that's totally out of the blue. So let's go on to the next one. This one's really important because this was what I was talking about earlier. Use your own skills, your own personal experiences to put it into your story to help move it away from what everyone else writes. Because, like I said, your own personal experiences are always going to be separate from everyone else. In this example, think about what you're good at. Your skills. What can you bring to your writing? For example, I'm a creative writer, I'm an artist, I'm a costumer, I'm a performer, and I try and put that into the writing. For example, I wrote a story about characters going to an isolated village where the humans and the animals communicate with each other. And the confrontation in there was with a group of wolves and predators. And he was an artist, he's not a fighter, so why would he use a gun or a knife or anything to fight anyone? And anyway, beyond that, I thought, well, how do you make a confrontation based upon art? Well, you think about the conflict that the characters go through, you try and tie it to what the original idea of your world is. For example, the conflict of an artist is often failing to be a success, failing to convey a message in your art, just not getting the recognition that you want or feel that you deserve. So that was the conflict I put at the end, and them challenging that character in a way that makes him feel worthless unless he can prove otherwise. And it didn't involve the stereotypical tropes of gun battles and sword fights and duels to the death, because it was my experience. My art manifested in story form, and each of you has something like that.
Something kind of interesting that I'm trying to do is that I have autism, which is a mental disability, and I also got depression. So that quite often what I'm doing in my story is taking visualized versions of the conflicts in my head into actual physical fights over those types of emotions in a story.
That can be cathartic, that can help people out, actually.
So what you're saying is you somehow put what you're confessing about everything going on in your life come up with that into word form and implement it in the character. So
not only your conflicting emotions, but your actual skill set. So whatever you're good at, try and put that in there and see how that works.
I was always picked on when I was younger, so having a dragon actually roll and plus you with ponies who are afraid of dragons actually works out fine there.
You wanted to say something else?
yes, this is an old idea I had. I kind of gave up on it. No idea why really, but when you said that, it kind of reminded me of the time when this was after I wrote. I guess when I wrote the first Pony fanfiction, I made the mistake of attempting to write some of the series for the factory, which obviously didn't work out too well. But just the amount of negative feedback, it wasn't just the negative feedback that got to me, it was the pure amount of hate and flame that people gave me for it. After that, I kind of just realized that I lost my writer's spirit for a little while. And I ended up, strangely enough, because I lost it, I got it back. Because I ended up coming with this completely new idea based around one of my OCs, which is the pen name I write, which is Quillen Words.
Cool.
And Quillen, he is supposed to be, which also I completely rewrote his bio. He is supposed to be, well, he's a dying star in the writing scene in Austria, and he wrote his first book, and it became a bestseller. And then after that, he kind of just, he wrote other books that didn't sell as well, and then the last time, this supposed story that I was going to write, the last time he wrote a book, he sent it into the Cancelot Writers Society, because where I was trying to get in. And basically when they replied, they pretty much told him, your writing is crap, stop writing, you're horrible.
It's funny, you're so mean.
And from there, he kind of goes through that same thing I did and disappears for a while. And then eventually, Twilight goes looking for their friend, and she's just wondering what happened, and finds him to be the head of a company called Winter's Words, which is his father's company. That he did not want to be a part of originally, which was just made reading books. Which is in truth, just a huge corporate mafia organization.
Oh wow, that's pretty
And he was the head of the mafia organization. The rest of it is just about him trying to get back. But the main thing I was trying to say with that is, would that be considered kind of like trying to put skills and emotional conflicts within writing?
Yeah, that very much seems like almost a verbatim of what you went through into a story form, which is not a bad thing at all. And many times a very good thing to help you work out through something that creates a writer's block and actually makes it better for you as an individual and a writer to create something either more from that or beyond it. Did you have anything you wanted to ask? You have a point to it.
I was just kind of listening.
Okay.
Just kind of listening for tips and stuff.
All right. I'm going to move on to the next one. This one's a little tough because there's a lot of things that you may rely on in your fan fiction that are hard to separate from. And if you can't come up with a way to distance yourself from these key concepts, like for example cutie marks or use of magic or the systems of Pegasus, Unicorn, Alicorn, Earth Pony, if you can't distance yourself from those established things, it's going to be tough for you to make something original. So you're going to have to do some sidestepping on a lot of things to change up all these key concepts. And you're going to have to sit down and look at your writing and figure out what they are. If it's pony writing, some of the things I just said are part of that. You need to figure out, you might have to change the pony characters too, most likely. But you'll have to figure out piece by piece, can I change this way, that way, this way, that way, this thing. If you keep changing little things here and there, you'll have something that becomes more and more different as time goes by. And eventually, you can show it to somebody who's not a pony fan, doesn't know that you write pony fiction, and they can look at it and say, oh, what's this? This is pretty cool. Did you publish this? They can ask you about it without having an indication of where it came from. And when you've hit that point, you've hit something great. So, go ahead.
It's kind of interesting to bring that up, because that's what I refer to in my head as my core processor of what I do in my stories. If I come up with the concept, stick it in the change machine and just start changing little things about it.
Yeah.
That is pretty much just how I plan a story in general. Because even though my major pick starts out in the very canon universe, it over time leaves in such ways that it's a subtle at first. And my plan is around like the 4th or 5th season, you suddenly realize that this is not like the canon anymore.
That's a really good analogy, this whole change machine, because this is what it is. Each one is a gear in the big machine of your story. And we can use a lot of the things that we said before, like your own skills. I can't figure out how to change this. Oh, what if I, like make this character a writer? Or what if, like you're saying, like being picked on. What if this is a character in the backstory being picked on, and you change it that way? You think about where your comfort zone was, and you're like, change that. You start putting everything you've learned, and you stick it in that change machine, and little by little, you're going to have a complete formula of a new world. Something that's wholly yours, that didn't start at all related to what you are.
Something else I want to point out is my story, what it's supposed to be as it goes on. Something that is just kind of concept that happens, that the pony world that you think is canon is really a false world hiding what it really looks like.
That's just a really good starting point, because that you can do so much with that and get away from so much to make your own world. I mean, you've got like the perfect setup. Keep at it. That's perfect. Did you guys have any questions? Okay. Yeah.
When you say change the character, do you mean just really changing their character? I mean like a personality or anything, making it their own unique kind of thing?
I'd recommend
like that.
Okay.
Growth. Throughout the story, the character slowly grows into something new. Don't keep them exactly the same forever, because then what has he learned?
That is actually
starting out with something and morphing into something else.
Yes.
Not doing that is what I call Dragon Ball symptom.
Oh no.
Dragon Ball may be a great anime, but its characters never developed.
Except Krillin, because he actually cared for a woman.
Well,
except for Krillin and Vegeta. Those are really the only two characters who really changed over time. Everyone else just fought to be the same.
that's an important point. Real quick, let's focus on that. The fact that characters that are often looked down upon are those that don't change because they have either all the answers or they can never do anything right. Basically, the spectrum, the end of the spectrums.
Mary Sue or anti-Mary Sue.
Yeah, and the thing with that is that you need to look at your character and see, are they highly capable of doing something that maybe they shouldn't be able to, or figure out where you can create problems for them that stems from them growing. If they don't have room to grow, then what's the point? How can someone empathize with a perfect individual? So also, this one's pretty big. Use your limitations to create a new concept. This is a really important one, because if you look at fan fiction, you're often limited by the source materials canon. If you change beyond that, did you want to say something? I thought I caught you. If you have your own original work, even then, you still have limitations. You just have to figure out what they are and then work around them. Here, can I give you an example real quick? Oh, go ahead.
The actual thing I want to say is that that's actually something I fought with my story originally, is my character's power style was perfect. What I've done over time is created the same effects over time, but through strife and change in the character's personality and physical capabilities.
Let's also look at something else in terms of limitations too, with compared to the real world, or our world here, with cutie marks. Cutie marks in the show represent what the character's destiny is, what they're good at. It's not the only thing they can do, but it's often what they focus on a lot. If we think here, we have occupations, we learn occupations, we're not limited, but there are certain marks that certain occupations have, things that we look at someone and may be able to determine an individual who is part of a certain occupation or a certain way of life. Like you may look at someone and think that they're military or interested in military, or there are various marks that people can have that don't have to be on the hip, telling you exactly what they are, and coming up with a way to do that. That it's just the show is based off of something in real life. Go back to that and then figure out how you can use that core idea to make yours work.
That's actually kind of an interesting point you brought up. Sorry that I'm talking so often. Often, but pretty much like the cutie marks. My story is heavily based on cutie marks, but not in the way you expect. And explains why they don't limit your destiny.
Okay.
Destiny, instead of limiting to your one destiny, what I'm trying to do is say that it's actually a tool to make your destiny unlimited.
Interesting. You should keep working on that. I actually just want to read that. So tell me later. I can see what it is. The thing I want to get to at the very end, it's the last resort. It's what I don't like to do, but you may have to if you're cornered and you don't have anything else left. You have about, 12 minutes. I'm going to try and do a little more after this last tip. The last resort is your salvage option. Maybe your story is just not working. Maybe there's something about it that you went so far into it that you've lost the original idea that could have worked. Maybe you just need to start over. And that's kind of tough, because when you're looking at a piece of work and you've been either working on it for something passionate for a little while or big long ideas for years, you don't want to stop, because you want to say, like, what if I didn't stop? What if I just push a little bit further and I get the right idea? Sometimes you need to look at a work, break it apart, figure out what to keep, and then put the rest to the side. Not throw away, just store it to the side. Like, for example, let's take a movie. Let's say the movie Aliens. Has everyone seen Aliens?
I have never seen any Aliens.
Let me just pick something everybody else. Let's go back to the film. I wanted to stick.
Star Wars?
Yeah, Star Wars.
Okay, does everybody know Star Wars? Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay,
we've seen Star Wars, and I'm pretty sure everyone's seen Star Wars.
Okay, so
I've seen nothing.
So let's say with Star Wars.
I've never seen the Lion King.
I feel bad.
No, it's okay. In Star Wars, let's say, for example, that you're writing out, you've never seen Star Wars, and it doesn't. Let's just say, for example, that you've never seen it. You're writing out an idea about it, and you're looking at it, and you're thinking this doesn't work. Maybe this whole, character being like a space cowboy farmer doesn't quite seem to work here. I mean, what do I do? Like, you got to look at it, take it apart, and figure out what does work. Picking something established like Star Wars is going to be an opinion, because if I pick something there, for example, if I like lightsabers and other people don't, so what do you have to say?
May I actually help you there? It's like my fanfiction I've been talking about this whole time. This is its third version.
Okay.
Third version. I actually started it out 2 versions ago as a multi-series fanfiction. Switched it over to Yu-Gi-Oh! Ended up that when the Yu-Gi-Oh! Version wasn't working. I sat down and looked at it. During the first few days when I was just becoming a Brony, right? And pretty much what I did was I took 2 specific scenes from it and built this whole fanfiction out of those 2 scenes.
I just had an idea if you look at some of the concept art of Star Wars, there's a lot of changes that were made into the original form. For example, Luke Skywalker is supposed to have a mask and look more like the Darth Vader, because it didn't say why in the picture, but I assumed that they just couldn't breathe in the area that they were in. It looked really cool. I was taken out. Movie-wise, you want to see the character's face. There was also a really cool picture of showing all of the X-Wings in space about to attack the Death Star, and there was a lot of them. I mean, there was a crazy amount.
Like 50,000 of them exploding the Death Star.
It wasn't that big, but it was just one of those things where you're like, that doesn't seem as dire. So then maybe in that example, take out a bunch of them and just have a smaller force.
That is actually my main tip to anyone writing fanfiction from my experience. If something isn't working, look at it, take, look at it, take, look at it, take the very best ideas from it and just use those parts of it.
I don't know if anyone else here does this, but I used to have these great ideas from other things when I'm working on a main project, and I'd be like, I want to save that. But then I thought,
let's integrate it.
Yeah, why am I saving this great idea for later when no one may see it at all because I'm not even using it? Just put it together with what you're doing. Try, unless you already have an idea of how to use it, try not to save things that are just on the side. Put them into your main idea, make them work with what you have now, and then from there, come up with even greater ideas. Don't resist the temptation to save things and just not show them at all to anyone. Because if you have some really great ideas that maybe you're playing like, Star Wars game and you're thinking about MLP and you have this great star and space-based idea and this pony concept, fuse it together and see what happens. It doesn't have to be a Star Wars pony crossover. It could just be, ponies in space.
In space!
Let's see here.
Question about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
You said about avoid trying to save things, you said? Right?
Yeah, if you can find a way to put it into your current idea.
Well, I just wonder if I can in any way implement this into my current thing I'm working on.
Go ahead.
Which was I pretty much wrote a brief history of Lewisville, which it started out with this one Alpine kid, who's I wonder if I should actually just tell people to stop. Do we have time?
We have 6 minutes.
Okay, I'll give you a brief version. He basically was in control of the wielder of the 6 elements. He had to fight a guy who was he wielded elements opposite of the harmony, which I gave him all different names and whatnot.
Yeah.
He ended up falling. He ended up dying, but then before then he had taken in Celestia Moon as his apprentices. But they weren't, eloquent yet. Like I think that made Celestia a unicorn and Luna Pegasus, and then they ended up getting control of the elements and destroying the Star Throne and whatnot. That's how they became royalty. And do you have any idea on how you can implement that into my Assassin's Creed story?
Oh, 3 ideas actually.
Do you want to say them real quick? Because I want to do some other.
I'll say them very quick. Basically, there are 3 ways you can do it. Either somehow attach the events of the Assassins and the Templars like how the other 4 elements being wielded by assassins and the princesses versus the Templars. The Templars are destroyed and Celestia Luna become royalty. Is one idea. Another idea is you can have that going on the side. The Templars are trying to stop it, and the assassins are trying to stop the Templars from stopping it.
Conflict everywhere.
Stopping it, and my third idea, I just lost it. Sorry.
Basically, well, you could just have the Templars, the followers of that guy, and the assassins were signed thanks to the king who died. That
was my third idea.
The nice part of that is actually is I made before Luna went all wacko and decided to try to bring it on Eternal Night and whatnot. I made it so that she was the one who started the Assassin Order.
Yeah.
Which is why when she comes back, y'all remember she's the rebel.
Yeah.
She's the leader. And that's why it's because of that I'm wondering how can I implement this into that, because maybe like Luna saw something in the near distant future or whatever, and so she started this whole order.
The Templars were back for revenge for the death of their king, but they needed to gain an army, so it took a couple centuries.
Just keep their ideas in mind.
I'm taking mental notes.
There's let's see, we've got about 4 minutes. We don't really have to vacate the room until like at the time because I'm the next panel.
What's the next panel?
I'll tell you. But one of the things that that we need to be careful. MLP, I found with me, I get a lot of ideas for pony-based stories, and basically, like, I can be at work thinking, like, what if Lyra comes in, you know, and she's like, suddenly she just walks in like that and makes a whole story out of that, or like, what if I'm driving home from work and I come up with an idea like, oh, what if there's this great chase sequence I have, like, on the highway with the character doing this, doing that, and another idea. Try to resist the urge to make every idea you have
A story on its own.
Actually part of a fan world. Because I started doing that, but I found a lot of great ideas that I thought, you know, they can work separate from MLP, from anything else. They don't have to be part of that. And if you want to make your writing career or your hobby or whatever you call it, if you want to further it beyond fan fiction, you need to look at what MLP does for you as an idea machine and start extracting these ideas into original concepts. Because if you've got this great resource, you need to use it to your advantage. And the best thing to do is to look at it and think like, okay, I had this really great idea about, you know, Twilight and Applejack on an adventure. There doesn't have to be Twilight and Applejack. Maybe I can do this. And
something actually I do in that kind of area is I'll take a character from the show and slowly evolve them into a new character by warping the story.
That's not a bad idea, because eventually you will not have the original character and you'll have someone completely new.
It's actually something I'm fun with, because if you ever played Assassin's Creed 3, obviously
I love Assassin's Creed 3.
Connor's outlook on life completely changed once you complete the game. Like his complete sight. Well, first of all, his psychological health is kind of questionable.
Yeah.
Luckily, because it's an Assassin's Creed fanfiction, I think it might be relatively easy to write into it. Just because, barely 48 hours earlier, I'll say you didn't have to kill anyone.
Here you go. I'll give you this this idea real quick. Look at some resources outside the fandom, like writersdigest.com. They have some great stuff. If you guys look on that, you'll find something new like every day. And then also, if you want things to actually be sold, I suggest a site called Duo, like D-U-O, trope.com. And they offer like a free 7-day trial, but it's got all these listings of various places you can submit works to, written works. And I'm talking about like written works. Like, if you want to further what you want to do, look on these sites, look at their contests, and just go for it. WritersDigest.com is a great place to start. Do a trope if you have some money that, you know, for the year subscription, and you're actually serious about submitting things. Try that one too. The last thing I'll ask is, not ask, but tell you is try fanstory.com for ideas on where to submit things and actually earn a little bit of, you know, money here and there. Try that one. I saw that site, and it's got some interesting things on there. Just look on that one.
And what?
Fanstory.com. So try those out.